Uppercut, uppercut, sonic boom! Hello there, humans of PubG Mobile YouTube. Today's video is a giant of a video. This is the one you've all been waiting for. This is ranking every AR in PubG Mobile. We're going to be doing it via the tried and true star system. 5 stars good, 1 star bad. We're doing close range, mid-range, long range, and then an average overall. There are going to be some disagreements amongst the humans. It wouldn't be worth doing if there weren't disagreements and strong opinions. Try to keep it polite and constructive. The comment button is there for your use. Leave comments, like the video, and subscribe. If you like this kind of content, we can certainly do more. I'm going to do an overview at the end, and it is fair to say that there will be some guns in here that are amazing weapons, but which in the average don't do as well as some would expect. Bear in mind that it is an average, but a lot of these weapons are specialized weapons. Anyway, we're going to kick this off with the Famas. Let's get the bad stuff out of the way early. Over to you, Bushka. The Famas. The gun was never that strong to begin with, and it has been power crept quite savagely over the past year or so. Well, originally only a Livic weapon, it now features all over the world. But the problem with the Famas is that for a low damage round, its 37.9 base is by far the lowest damage round of any of the ARs. It has incredibly bad recoil, both vertically and horizontally. It kicks like a mule. In all the testing I've done, it's come away time and time again, whether just with the eye test or actually putting the numbers in a spreadsheet, as the worst recoil weapon in the AR class. And that's a problem when you're a CQC specialist. It's terrible at long range. You can see me switching to a Car 9 here rather than using the Famas in the mid-range. It's even at 50 meters because of that high recoil and its inability to mount any kind of attachments outside of a muzzle brake or a compensator for that matter, which are absolute musts if you want to run it. It's got SCAR-L iron sights. You see those high vertical periscopes that really block out a lot of the world, which make it very poor for ADSing outside of a red dot. And that CQC is really the only value. Has high bullet speed like all the 5.56 ARs, but with that kick, and it's a big kick between the first and the second rounds, your animation kick, it's not very good at any kind of sniping, especially considering it's a lower damage gun. For me, the Famas is 3 stars for close, 2 stars for mid, 2 for long, giving it an average of 2.5 stars or just under. I'm going to start this M416 chat with a little clip showing me running an M416 and an AKM, because I think you really need to look at the M416 as the player base does, as the complementary all-star. It is a gun that is so good when playing with others. In other words, UMPs or DBSs or AKMs or whatever you want to do. It slots in very well as a well-dropped weapon with no animation kick on its prone sprays and high bullet speed coupled with very low base damage. And I say very low in that 40.9 is your base damage. The only AR that has lower base damage than 40.9 is the formerly mentioned Famas. Your SCAR-Ls are 42, your AUGs go all the way up to 43, and your AKMs and Grozas and Mutants and M762s top out in the 47.9 to 45.9 range. This means that the M416 is really suited to long range and mid-range engagements and not really ideal for close ranges. You can run it for CQC, but it is not the best. And I figure this will be the one that gets me the most hate mail, because although people run it for CQC all the time, because it is accurate, it's definitely not a CQC weapon in its extremities. There are so many ARs here that do much better in CQC than the M416, but that's not why you run an M4. You run an M4 for the stability and the confidence that it can get the job done for you in a wide variety of situations. Is it the most versatile AR in game? No, I don't think it is. More on that later, because we're going to do a couple of guns now that really do include versatility as a calling card. Is it good? It's absolutely good. Its close range is ranked as 3 stars. Its mid-range is ranked as 4 stars. And its long range is also ranked as 4 stars. And that close range for me was the hardest mark to give it. But I have to be honest, it doesn't have the high vertical recoil of a lot of these guns, and that means you can hip fire more successfully. 3 stars for close, 4 for long, 4 for mid, giving an average of just over 3.5 stars, and absolutely top scoring across the board there so far. G36C, the stablemate of the M416. Same base damage, same bullet speed, very different recoil profile. A lot of people don't run the G36C just because they feel so comfortable with the M416, but I urge you to give it a shot. The G36C's recoil profile only goes one way, and that is vertical. It has next to no horizontal recoil. It can make for the most ridiculous and delightful of long-range sprays. Unfortunately, like a lot of these guns that we're going to see, it is only featured on a minimal selection of maps, namely Karakin and Vikendi. It's pretty spectacular though. Watch this spray. The snap on it, the fact that it never goes anywhere, it just goes vertical. And controlling vertical recoil when it's only going vertically is so much easier than controlling, say, the Famas's recoil, which goes both straight up quite hard and left and right quite hard. When you only have to really pull down to make it a good spray, life is very, very simple. And you get the standard 5.56 AR glory, the long range, big bullet speed, which means you have to lead targets by less, coupled with a very nice hip fire profile. For me, this is the best world drop 5.56 AR in the game. If only it was on more maps. 3 stars for close, 4 for mid, and just edging out the M416 at long range with 4.5 stars, due 100% just to that non-left and right recoil. One-way recoil, very, very easy for a total of just under 4 stars. Let's talk about the Scar-L. Now, the Scar-L for me is one of the most underappreciated ARs in the Pantheon. The player base for years has been just dimed out on the M416. And the Scar-L, for obvious reasons, was behind the M4. It was the same base damage as the M416, and it had more recoil. But they've done a lot of work on the Scar-L. It has slightly worse recoil than the M416, but it also does 42 base damage to the M416's 40.9. Now that extra point of damage doesn't sound like much, but let me give you an idea on why it is so important. If you're in a gunfight at very close range and you fire 4 shots into a level 2 vest with the Scar-L, it will do just over 100 damage. If you fire 4 shots at close range into a level 2 vest with an M416, it will do just under 100 damage. So it takes an extra shot in CQC to clear a level 2 vest. And it's still outstanding in the mid-range. That little extra recoil from the Scar-L drops it below the M4 in the long range, and it really is excellent overall. 3.5 stars CQC, 4 stars mid, 3.5 long, giving it about the same rating as an M416, but a specialization that is very, very different. The QBZ95. We won't have to spend long on this because this is a Scar-L clone. The big difference between the QBZ and the Scar-L, and there are 2 of them, it has a longer reload because it's a bullpup class AR. It also has a very weird iron sight. And it mounts the red dot or whatever scope you are putting on it on this handle that is above the top of the gun. This means that you can get some really odd sprays with this gun. It's not that it looks weird, it's that it sits weird. So if you're firing into a window, it will quite often fire lower than you would like, and it will hit the windowsill. They're very, very minor differences. And because of that, I've given it the same rating as the Scar. I've dropped it a half a star overall in the mid-range just because of that reload. That reload is often the difference between a target getting into cover and a target not getting into cover when you're on that second clip. But it's hard to fault it. Again, a weapon that's only on 2 maps, Livik and Sanhok, overall not quite as good as a Scar, but there's daylight between them. The Orb. Wow. This is, for my mind, overall the best AR in game. And I'll be honest, it's not close. It has flare drop stats. It didn't used to. It used to have the same stats as the M416 with slightly improved recoil. It still has better recoil than the M416. But they upped the damage to 43 from 40.9, which is a big jump. And then they went one step further and upped it from 638 rounds per minute to 741 rounds per minute. That's a huge increase. It's better than 10%. And if you're getting a better than 10% increase on a gun that already has better damage and better recoil, that's spectacular. It's excellent in close. 4 stars in close. It's amazing in the mid-range. 4.5 stars in mid-range. And it's an M416 with more damage, more rate of fire, and better recoil in long range. It gets a 5-star rating as a spray machine, giving it an overall average of just on 4.5 stars. It's no surprise that I think this is the best AR in game. It doesn't have a weak point. It's easy to run. It hip fires, it sprays, it rips. The AUG. Get it while you can. The M762 is basically the 762 starting point for a CQC AR. It's got the same rate of fire as a QBZ95 or an M416 or a G36C. It's got high recoil. You can see the vertical recoil on this thing, even single tapping, is legitimate. It jumps. And it's got a lot of left to right in it as well. It's good in the close. It extends okay out to the mid, but it's garbage at anything over, say, 75 meters to 100 meters, where you can get shots done. But I mean, 50 meters is really the best effective range for this thing. Once you get out past that, it stops being anywhere near as good as a 5.56 AR. Doesn't mean it's a bad gun. It just means it's very different in terms of its specialization. For those of us who've been using the M762 forever, it's quite comfortable and you can run it fairly well. But there's no denying there's better options on the table. Same rate of fire as an M4, 638 rounds per minute, but a much better base damage round of 45.9. And that means that in close quarters combat, I'd go with this over an M416. And for that reason, 3.5 stars in close. 3 in the mid, you can put a vertical foregrip or an angle grip on it and negate either the vertical or the horizontal recoil as is your want. But for long range, 2.5, only to be used in extreme emergencies and not to be relied upon. Basically a 3-star overall average, a 762 AR, and your middle of the road AR if you want to grab one. Which leads us on to the Ace 32. This is a Beryl M762 by another name. It's not a production of the M762. It's just got the same kind of gameplay style and same kind of characteristics. You drop 0.9 base damage on this gun, but you gain about the same back in recoil. It's slightly less recoil than the M762. It's the same kind of feel in close and mid. And long, it's not to be relied upon. It's got that same big kick, a big animation kick, and the same rate of fire. Despite the fact that I've seen PubG PC and PubG mobile things saying that it's much lower in rate of fire, they may adjust that in patches. But right now, this is the same rate of fire as an M416 or a M762. And for me, that means 3 close stars, 3.5 stars in the mid-range, 2.5 stars long for an average of 3 stars. The AKM. This is a gun that for the longest time was good, but not great. And then they did this weird thing where they just gave it the limb damage of a god. It has 32.4 base limb damage. If you're wondering if that's a lot, an M416 will do 18 limb damage, 18.4 limb damage. This thing will fire at the basically same rate as an M416, 625 rounds per minute versus 638 for the M4. And yet it can three-shot targets that aren't quite 100% health just by hitting them in the legs or the arm. Of course, if you watched your videos lately, you'd know that there are some problems with limb damage in-game, and that if people don't have their weapons out, arm limb damage doesn't really exist. It's all going onto the vest. But hey, you can't have everything in this world. The AKM is a freak for CQC. It's also got massive headshot damage with 110 base helmet damage versus your standard 94 base damage for an M416. So it will one-shot a no helmet wearing target, which is great on hot drops and things like that. It's got a lot of recoil, but the recoil isn't hard to manage in the close. And the close is where this gun shines. 4 stars for close range, 2.5 stars for both mid and long. You should really only be single shotting with it at long range, and mid-range full auto is random. But hey, run something in your second slot and go away happy. The Honeybadger, one of the most unique and different weapons that PubG Mobile have put out in quite some time. And I like that about the Honeybadger. Guns that are different for me are guns that are fun. The Honeybadger is just a mishmash of stats. It's got the iron sight of an M416. It's got the base damage of an AUG, 42.9 versus 43 base. So they're basically the same number. It's got the rate of fire, which is slightly higher than an M416 and slightly lower than, say, an AUG. It's 698 rounds per minute versus an AUG 741. But it's got the bullet speed of, well, it's the worst bullet speed in an AR in PubG Mobile. It's very, very low. What you've got here is 666 meters a second of bullet speed, meaning it's more like a SMG, like a UMP or something, with improved bullet speed and bad recoil. And for that reason, I think this is a gun that is often better in hipfire than it is in ADS. It's also got this suppressor on the end of it, which is great. I mean, you'll take any advantage you can, but a suppressed AR is not exactly the be-all and end-all of weaponry. It's not a gun that you can use at range, so no one's really going to be confused as to where you're standing when you're firing this thing. Overall, a bit of a mishmash, but a fun weapon, and a weapon that I think doesn't get enough play. Definitely 100% a CQC only gun. If you're going to run this one at mid and long, you're in a desperate time. 3.5 stars for close quarters combat. One of the best hip fires in any AR. 2.5 for mid, 2 for long. Really bad long range. Low alpha, poor bullet speed, high recoil. Yeah, let's like, subscribe, and comment. If you have a different opinion to me, why not leave a comment about it down below, and maybe we can even make a video about it. You never know. These things have happened before. The Groza. What more could you want out of a close quarters weapon than what this 762 monster offers? Shuddering rates of fire, huge sweaty wads of damage, the kind of headshot alpha strike that makes people weep. This is a specialist weapon that should be used in the close range, and then really doesn't do a lot more. Look, you can make crazy little ideas of long-range Groza 3x sprays, and that's all good, but it's not the best at them. What it's best at is things like this, where you need to clutch up, where there's a lot of people, and you don't have a lot of time. Because what it certainly has a lot of is damage. It's got the fastest time to kill of any AR in the game. Now that was obviously rubbish at 228 meters. It doesn't happen very often, but it does do this an awful lot. People driving by with a Groza, it's like a laser beam, because you just basically put the laser straight out and let them run their heads through it. has the same base damage as an AKM, but an AKM has 625 rounds per minute, and the Groza has 779 rounds per minute. Doesn't have the AKM's limb shot damage. If it did, it would be completely and utterly broken. The hip fire is not incredible, but it's a lot better than people give it credit for. And the recoil, while not incredible, isn't really what holds it back from being a good long-range weapon. No. That's the bullet speed. It's 714 meters per second is not an excessively large amount of bullet speed. 5 stars for close. I don't think there's any question about it. 2.5 for mid and 2 for long. It's such a specialist weapon. It gives it just over 3 stars as an average. The Mark 47 Mutant. A great idea as a concept. A 2-burst AKM. But, I mean, as you can see here, even when you're hitting your shots, it's just not enough. It just isn't enough. It doesn't have the AKM's limb damage. It's much harder as a burst weapon to find and fire it. It's just overall very, very poor in its institution. And unlike the M16A4, where you can buy a full auto modification that actually enhances the weapon, it doesn't do anything for the Mark 47 Mutant, because when it goes full auto, it actually loses that 2-shot burst and becomes a single-shot full auto, which fires very, very slowly, meaning you've got a slow-firing, high-recoil weapon in CQC, because if you try and use this thing at range, you're going to be very disappointed. Low bullet speed, high recoil do not equal ranged supremacy. When I say things like this, people are like, well, I can use this and I can do that. Look, I can hit shots with a revolver at range too on occasion. Is it better than an M416 sprayed? No. And this is what you've got to do. Judge it against its peers. If they bring in a full auto modification to this gun that allows it to fire full auto at tap speed in bursts, then this may change into a specialist CQC weapon that is a lot of fun and unique to play. But until they do, running it is more or less, you're just running it for fun. And a full auto M16 is a much better option. 2.5 stars for close, 2 for mid, 1.5 for long for a 2-star average. Let's talk about that M16. This was always a handy switch weapon. Why? Well, it's got no recoil. It's really got no recoil. Have a look at it. Like, even on single tap at range with a 2x, it's so easy to hit targets and clear shots. And it was also because when you're running it with 5.56, it's almost perfect for holding on to 5.56 rounds, having a weapon that you can use in your second slot until you pick up a Scar L or an M416 or an AUG or a G36C or a QBZ95. And then they brought in the full auto mod. And it's now become a really viable, fun, engaging, and excellent mid to long range AR. You can run this full auto with a 6x and get outstanding results. It's not as good on a switch as a Scar or an M4, an AUG, or any of those, so it does limit your loadout somewhat. But it's fun, and it really works. At long range, it's really, really good. At close range, it's absolutely horrible. But a lot like the Groza, who cares? When you've got 937 meters a second bullet speed and little to no recoil. 2 stars for close, 3 stars for mid, 4 stars for long, giving it an overall average of 3 stars. Now, that might sound crazy, giving an M16 3 stars and giving a Beryl M762 3 stars as an average. But that's kind of where these ratings videos are very difficult to make sense of. Sure, those numbers average out, but we all know that the M16 second slot and the Beryl M762 is primary slot. Basically what we're looking at here is that outside of a very, very, very small number of weapons in PubG Mobile, there are so many different ways to be successful. And certain weapons complement each other much more efficiently than others. For instance, running a UMP and an M762 is kind of stupid, but running a UMP and an M16A4 makes a lot of sense. Running an M16A4 and a Kar98 is terrible. Running an M16A4 and a Mini 14 is terrible. But running a Beryl M762 and either of those weapons really, really works. Some of these guns are not really suited to play well with others, and others are. Overall, the best close quarters gun is the Groza. The best mid and long range gun is the AUG. And overall, the AUG for me is easily the best AR in the game. And that's because not only is it versatile, meaning it can fill all roles for all people, but it's a crate weapon. It's an airdrop weapon with special damage and rates of fire. And it should be really, really good. I like that they've got the Groza and the AUG in those kind of slots at the top of the table. How much better is the performance of the AUG in the mid-range than, say, an M416 or a SCAR-L? Well, it's a substantial enough amount that there's a difference, but it's not substantial enough you can't use a SCAR-L to rinse people at range, or an M4 to rinse people at range, and you might not even notice over the course of a game that, you know, if you were using an AUG. I love that about PubG Mobile. The balance is nuanced. It's there, but it's not always like you lose if you're running this gun or you win if you're running this gun. They don't sell power. They just don't sell power. They sell you skins, they sell you embellishments, and you can decide to run them or not. But in terms of the weapons themselves, they're incredibly well balanced and thoughtful, whether it be differences in rate of fire, in recoil, in limb damage, bullet speed, in their ability to mount certain attachments, in the size of their magazine. They all add up to give you a different overall product. I hope this video has been helpful for you, particularly if you're a new player. There will be a lot of other videos like this if this one gets enough views, comments, and likes, so be sure to vote with your feet and get it out there to the general public. But otherwise, just thanks a lot for having me in your life, letting me be a productive part of the PubG Mobile community, and I look forward to hopefully making more and more content like this over the years to come. I'm Bushka, look after yourself, stay safe on the battlefield, and until next time, bye for now.